All right, welcome back again to the JFK Assassination Audit. This is video number 47. It's now 21 January. We're going to continue on this testimony of Bookout. See what he says. Now, remember yesterday, he said, I'll just read it to you again. He said that he didn't want to have anything to do, did not want any Dallas attorney representing him. I only wanted someone named Mr. App from New York or someone from the Civil Liberties Union. And we just listened to yesterday a video by the head of the Dallas Bar Association, and he didn't exactly say that. What Oswald said is he prefer option A, Mr. App, option B, Civil Liberties Union. If those aren't available, then he would go an attorney from Dallas. So it seems like Bookout is trying to pin Oswald into this is what he's saying when he's not really saying those things. Again, you got to wonder about the career of someone who's been an FBI agent for 20-something years, who paraphrases in his own slant what other people say. And so it says something about the mentality of that person and whether they're really listening to the witnesses, listening to the evidence, and maybe they're just coming in with their own opinion from the very beginning and they're looking for evidence to fulfill that opinion, which is what most people do. But if you're an FBI agent, you're a public servant, you're not paid to do what most people do. You're paid to do specific things that we want done. Anyway, let's see. You heard this? Yes, that was in my presence. I don't recall the name of the attorney, but I was there at the time during the during that conversation. Can you tell us approximately how long this Saturday morning interview took? Well, that would be approximately an hour. No interview that I participated in lasted over an hour, and I think roughly this one probably started around 10:35 in the morning and lasted approximately an hour. All right. What was his physical appearance at this time? His appearance was no different than it was on the 22nd. You saw no other bruises? No. Did he seem rested or tired? I saw no difference in his appearance on the 23rd than it was on the 22nd. How about the way he handled himself? Was he any calmer, any more communicative Saturday morning than he had been Friday afternoon? Well, I think that he might have been not quite as belligerent on the 23rd as he was on the 22nd. You don't say. So most people, when you first catch them or first put them in a situation like that where they're going to go to jail, are going to be pretty damn belligerent in the beginning. But after they spend a night in jail, they've kind of resigned themselves to the situation that they're probably going to be there for a while. So now they're going to try to be a little more quieter, not as animated, maybe even more cooperative. That's why, judges, when people are in contempt of court or refuse to answer questions, especially to a judge, that's when the judge puts them back in jail to give them a night or so to think about it. Okay? That's what jail does to people. Anyway, how about the way he handled himself? Okay, we did that. Well, I think that he might not have been as quiet, as belligerent as he was on the 23rd as he was on the 22nd, but he still refused to discuss certain points indicated about selected service card being one point that I recall. I remember he was asked if he would take a polygraph, and he said he would not. That had always been his practice, not to agree to take a polygraph. See, Oswald is doing everything he should be doing, except shutting up. Okay? When there's evidence that may incriminate you, you don't want to talk to the police about it. I mean, how stupid are you? How stupid do the police... the police are just going to think if he's committed a crime, he's just going to give it up and say, yeah, I did this, and I did it like that, and this is how it was done, and here's my confession. Bullshit. Even if you're not guilty, you shouldn't be talking to the police about anything. But anyway, you can't go back and correct this because Oswald he's ignorant. He doesn't know any better. He knows he needs to talk to an attorney, but he doesn't know enough to shut the hell up. Anyway, and then a polygraph, especially back in the 60s, polygraphs can be manipulated. Okay? We've had many instances where Cuban agents, Russian agents have proven that they can manipulate and lie in polygraphs and pass. So polygraph is not a good standard. I know the police like to believe in them, and what the police do is they use the answers, especially anything that shows any kind of negative response or guilty response. They use that to put pressure on the individual. Okay, they don't really believe the polygraph's going to tell them anything. They use the results of the polygraph to put pressure on the person. Well, it says here that you're lying on question number 5. Now, where were you? What's the real situation here? We're going to find out one way or another. And they use that, okay, as a pressure technique. Okay, and here's another thing. Okay, that people facing, spending the night in jail, people surrounded by policemen, people taking polygraph tests that are being manipulated, people that are under a lot of pressure, people that don't have as much knowledge of the law as they should. But then again, if you're going along in life and you're not violating the law and you're not a criminal, a lot of people are going to have the attitude of, why should I be educated on the law because I don't break the law? But that's not the case. You can still be arrested, detained, questioned, whatever, and the police, are either ignorant or trying to manipulate you, and your ignorance is going to get you in trouble. This is why it's always good to shut the hell up. Okay, because let's just put it really clear. The police aren't really interested in finding the truth. Okay? They're only interested in proving something that they believe is true. I don't care what any policeman tells you. Okay? There may be a few angels out there, but most policemen are interested, if they think it's a certain way, in proving that point instead of having an open discussion about the facts. Okay? That's just the way it works nowadays. People have gone to jail for 30 years because police assumed this is the way it was, and they found evidence to build that case. Okay? Anyway, he didn't elaborate on it. Did he make any further comment at this interview about his interviews with the FBI or their interviews of his wife? I think probably this is the one I referred to a while ago. Yes, it would be in the interview that he made further comment that on the interview of Ruth Payne by the FBI regarding his wife, that he felt that his wife was intimidated. Also in this interview, that he made mention, as previously stated, about that he had arrived about 19 July 1962 from Russia and was interviewed by the FBI at Fort Worth, Texas. Now again, he's absolutely correct there, okay? Because his wife is not speaking English. Ruth Payne is not a lawyer, okay? So these are, Ruth Payne's from a country where when the KGB, would be their FBI, shows up, you're in fear, okay? Because they could take you, take your family, for whatever reason they wanted, okay? She doesn't know the laws in America. She knows a little more free. She still doesn't know her rights. And this is what the FBI and the police depend on, is that people don't know their rights, okay? And this is just here's the thing, is that when the FBI or the police are dealing with a case, it's just a case to them, okay? One of many that they'll deal with in their career. They're going to deal with that case and they're going to move on. Whatever happens, they're going to move on with their career. When it's you and I, it's our life. Our life could either, be seriously diverted or slowed down or even ended by whatever this FBI or policeman decides. Okay? So for the FBI and the police, it's just a career. For us, as individuals, it's our life on the line. Okay? And it really bothers me that a lot of FBI and a lot of police don't have that in mind. Okay? You're just another suspect. Okay? You're just another Joe they're interviewing. Okay? It's just another day in their life that they're getting and making another dollar on. Okay? Anyway, he stated that he felt that they had overstepped their bounds and used various tactics in interviewing him. Did he specify what these tactics were? No, he did not. In your report, and again, what he's talking about is the FBI. They don't have to tell the truth, okay, when they're questioning you. They can lie. There's nothing going to penalize them for lying, okay? So they can say whatever they want to say if they are trying to extract information, okay? Anyway, did you specify what the tactics were? No, he did not. In your report before this interview, you mentioned that he again denied shooting President Kennedy and apparently said that he didn't know until then that the Governor Connally had been shot. That's correct. That was his statement, that he denied shooting President Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963, and commented that he did not know Governor John Connally had been shot. Now, see, that's interesting because, okay, he's going to find out from a coworker that Kennedy's been shot. But no one's going to know that Connally's been shot also, unless they watch the news. Did you form any impression about whether he was genuinely surprised? Did he look genuinely surprised to you, or how did you feel about that? I'm just asking for your impression. If you don't have one, say so. No, I have no impression on that. I arrived at no conclusion. What did he say at this interview with respect to the purchase of a rifle or the possession of a rifle? And one thing I'm just thinking here, thinking about Bookout and Hosty and all these other guys, but especially Bookout. Bookout's been arresting suspects, sitting in interviews with suspects, questioning suspects for close to 20 years. Okay? And now he's got this guy accused of the ultimate crime, shooting the president. He's got to think that this guy is handling himself pretty damn... compared to the other guys, that I've handled, bank robbers, mobsters, that this uneducated guy is handling himself pretty damn well for just shooting the president. So that's why I think Bookout is a little befuddled, because he doesn't understand how this guy could have shot the president and still act so damn calm. Anyway, that's why he has no impression about it. Generally, he stated he didn't own a rifle, hadn't ever made any mail order purchase of one. See, this is the problem I have here. This is where, remember I said there's times that Oswald speaks and he looks and sounds completely innocent. There's other times he looks and speaks and sounds completely guilty. Now, of course, this is just Bookout saying what he heard Oswald say. Oswald could have never said this, okay? But I believe Oswald was asked that question by the news media, and they said he said he didn't own a rifle or something like that. Anyway, I think Oswald's just scared. He's trying to, oh, yeah, I have a rifle, okay, but oh, God, so they're trying to tie me in. So I'm just going to say I don't have a rifle, okay? Now, but Oswald's got to know in the back of his mind that rifle is sitting in Mrs. Payne's garage, okay? And that eventually they're going to figure it out and go to Mrs. Payne's and find the rifle. Anyway. Now, did anything transpire that you observed concerning Oswald between the end of that morning interview on Saturday and the next interview of Oswald? No. You stayed at the police headquarters in that period performing liaison functions? Yes. You did not observe another lineup? No. There were no other lineups. But you did not participate? But I did not, let's see, but you did not participate? But I did not observe. Oh, there were other lineups, excuse me. Or observe. Any others? That's kind of odd, don't you think? Now, approximately when did the next interview occur? The interview at 6:30 p.m. on November 23rd, 1963. How long did this interview take or last? Not over an hour. Who conducted this interview? Captain Fritz. Did you ask any questions that you recall? I don't recall any specific questions during this interview. And see, this is the thing I don't understand. By the third interview, you would think Oswald would figure it out. Just shut the hell up. Don't say anything. Eventually they're going to give up. Okay? But you got to think about, why is Oswald continuing to talk? Okay? Because he's under the impression, okay, that in our society, that if you're innocent of something, that you defend yourself to the hilt. Okay? You stand up for yourself because no one else is right now. This is what he's under the impression of. But any lawyer would tell you to shut the hell up. You're just digging your hole, okay? Because the police are going to manipulate your questions and your answers to get whatever answers to their questions they want, and not for your benefit. Everything you're saying they're using to build a case against you. It's not for your benefit to talk, okay? But Oswald didn't know this. He's not smart enough to know this, okay? Anyway. It was at this interview, was it not, that Oswald was shown photographs of himself holding a rifle and wearing a pistol in a holster. Now see, now they've gone to Mrs. Payne's on Friday. They found the photos, okay? And now all hell's going to break loose. That's correct. What was his comment about the photograph? His comment, as I recall, he was asked if this was his photograph, and his comment was that the head of the photograph was his, but that it could have been superimposed over the body of someone else. He pointed out that he had been apparently photographed by the news media numerous times in proceeding from the homicide and robbery bureau to the lineup and back, and that is how he probably got the photograph of his face. And he went into a long discussion about how much he knew about photography, and he knew that his face, could be superimposed over someone else's body holding the gun and the pistol and so forth. Now, you got to ask yourself, why would Oswald go into this long dissertation about this instead of just, oh shit, they got me, I'm going to shut the hell up? You know, he's obviously has a rifle. Of course, they don't find his fingerprints on it. But Marina has seen the rifle. Okay? And then this photo is not being manufactured between Friday night and Saturday morning, because we heard George de Mohrenschildt said that in 1967 they came back to Dallas. They were going through their property that they had left in storage when they were in Haiti for 4 years. They found the albums of Russian English that they had given Marina, okay, and that inside one of the records was a copy of this same photo that Marina had taken supposedly that April of 1963, after Oswald, maybe March, that Oswald received the rifle. And that Marina testifies about that she found there. So either Oswald's completely lying, or something happened in April. Okay? But you've got Oswald's signature on the photo saying, to my dear friend George, And then on the back, you've got Marina's signature saying, "Hunter of fascists, ha ha ha," in her handwriting in Russian. So something's going on there. I think it really did happen. I think Oswald bought the rifle. I think Oswald took the picture. Okay. And I think that the photo they're looking at is correct, but Oswald, again, is ignorant. He's trying to defend himself, to hold out as long as he can until he gets that attorney, or maybe one of his contacts contact him. So something's going on there. I'm not sure what it is exactly. Now, was his appearance and demeanor at this interview? Oh, now, was... Okay, looks like he gets interrupted. No. Different than it was during the previous interviews. Did he have any comment at this interview about counsel? None, other than at the outset of being first asked if that was his photograph. He first made the statement that he wouldn't make any comment about it without the advice of counsel. But then subsequently is when he went into the story about his face being superimposed over somebody's body. Again, I'm not saying that that Bookout is lying about this, but because you've got all these other detectives saying the same thing. But it could be they're all lying. All the police decided to get together and say this is what happened. But I very much doubt that, because you've got numerous interviews and numerous policemen all saying the same thing. So that's when you can usually judge that something is most likely true. If you have numerous people from different backgrounds generally saying the same thing, you can generally go that that's probably something that happened. Anyway, Mr. Stern, did he complain in the course of this interview about the way in which the lineup had been conducted? This is the interview in which he had a previously mentioned comment here was made to the effect that he had not been granted a request to put on a jacket similar to those worn by some of the other individuals in some previous lineups. Now, also got to remember that Oswald's got this shirt. They take that shirt off. He's running around in that white T-shirt. He's on live camera up and down that hall. You got people at home that are witnesses that are being brought in, but they're also at home watching TV. Okay? And so by the time they get him into the lineup at the police station, they've already seen Oswald on TV and they know what he looks like. Okay? And so it's not going to be hard to pick him out amongst the group. Okay? That's what I'm trying to say. But also, think about it. Okay? Just sit there and think about it for a second. I'm sure this has happened to everyone. You passed by and you saw something happen. You saw someone go into a store. You saw someone through a window. You saw someone run past you and went down the street. And so you got a general impression of what the person's like, but not an exact impression of what the person's like. And if that person is similar to Oswald, and then you see them later on TV and they say this guy shot somebody and then ran past down the street, you're going to say, hey, yeah, well, that could be the same guy. Yeah, that probably looks like the same clothes. Okay? And that's your memory is going to get filled in with now the pictures that you're seeing. Okay? I mean, think about close your eyes and think about how descriptive is your vision in your mind of someone that you saw for 5-10 seconds. Maybe you were on the sidewalk and you looked up and saw someone in an office building through a window. Or maybe you were on the street somewhere waiting for your bus and you saw someone run by you, okay, and saw them for maybe 5 or 6 seconds. Or maybe someone ran down the street and bumped into you and spilled your coffee, and then as you're picking up your stuff, you look up and look at them, and then they run past you. So, but then later on, you see on the news that at that building or that intersection or near that intersection where you're at, someone was shot Someone was killed. And then they got the guy. This is why the news media didn't put out people like this, pictures, because it biases the witnesses before they get a chance to get them in there. And then, you see the guy on TV, and they're saying, did you shoot him? Did you kill Officer Tippett? Did you shoot the president? And you're like, wow, that could be the guy. I don't know. Think about it. Yeah, it could have been him. It's kind of the same clothing, maybe, and same height and same build, maybe, but I don't know. And then you get in with the police, and then the news media is all over you, and then the police are there now. We just want you to be sure this could be the guy that killed the president. You could let this guy walk. So there's going to be a lot of pressure for this person to identify Oswald. Okay? Whether he has a jacket on or not, it's going to be pretty damn obvious who they want you to go after. So a lineup, especially in something like this, is going to be almost completely useless. All right. Let's see, where were we? Hold on one second. All right. So more or less, they had been to a specific area. For instance, in this last interview we are talking about, that was more or less confined to this photograph. Yes. Did he ever complain that we have been over that ground before, or make any such statements? No. I don't recall anything along that line, but I can recall one subject matter, probably in the first interview, where he talked about his life, method, or transportation after leaving the Texas School Book Depository, having gotten on the bus, and then the subject was taken up again. As I recall, in the second interview, expressed the same answer at that time, and then subsequently to the interview he backed up and said he wasn't actually true as to how he got home, that he had actually taken a bus due to the traffic jam. He had left the bus and gotten a taxi cab, by which means he actually arrived at his residence. Now, of course, like in a trial, they wouldn't have asked the witness like this, interviewed the witness like this, okay? It basically would have started off, Mr. Bookout, on the first interview on Friday, can you please tell us what happened in your own words? And then Mr. Bookout would go over what he saw, what he heard, and then they would start the specific questions and follow-ups and stuff like that. But this starts off with follow-ups, and they're probing questions, like, did he say this? Did he say that? And then the guy has to go back and think and recall. So we don't have a clear picture of what happened. What we have is a smattering of different shots and different angles at different directions. And what I mean is that's very confusing. If you have someone who's reading this, the human population jury, it's going to be difficult to follow exactly what happened. If you have a jury, they're going to need a blueprint of what happened. So you have this is what happened, and then follow up for clarification questions would come. But this is like a smattering of, it's over here, it's over there, we're over here now, and was he wearing this, and did he see the photo, and what kind of shoes was he wearing, what was his attitude? It's all over the board, okay? And it's done that way on purpose, okay? Not only does it confuse the witness, it confuses the reader, the juror. You're the juror. Okay, if you took the time to read all 26 fucking volumes of all this, this is what, a couple of pages long, just this Bookout testimony. And there are hundreds, 500 something witnesses, 1,000 witnesses, something like that. I really don't know exactly how many witnesses the Warren Commission interviewed. I don't know the exact number, but I know I've come across close to 500 or more. Anyway, had he been confronted by the driver of the taxi cab, or been told that they had located the driver of the taxi cab before he changed his story, or did the volunteer the story of the taxi? I don't recall specifically whether he was confronted with that or not, All right, do you recall whether in the course of any of the interrogations, any official, anyone present suggests in any way to Oswald that things would go better for him if he told the truth, if he confessed? Was he ever offered an inducement, any suggestion made that he would be better off if he told the full story? I can't recall anything along that line. I don't recall any type of inducement whatsoever. In each interview in which you participated, did you warn him about the possible use of his statement against him? I personally did not at each interview, but I can say that at each interview he was warned. He was warned numerous times by Captain Fritz, and his rights were fully explained to him. Well, at the beginning of this statement, he actually says he told Oswald that. He and Hosty told Oswald that. Anyway, now he's saying he don't recall that. Because here, I'll show you. Hold on one second. All right, can't find it, but I'm certain that I heard him say that. All right, so he was warned numerous times by Captain Fritz, and his rights were fully explained to him. What sort of warning would Captain Fritz give him generally? He gave him a warning consisting of the fact that he did not have to make any statement, that any statement he made could be used against him in a court, and had the right to consult with an attorney. Generally, that was the rights that were explained to him, as I recall. Now, I'm not sure if this is before Miranda or after Miranda. I believe it was before Miranda. But these general rights came up and were applied across the board in every jurisdiction, which is what Miranda is. But basically, it's the statement I just read there. This was said at each session at which you were present. Hold on one second. All right, so I always like to double-check everything because I have general understanding of things, but sometimes I don't know specific things. So, yeah, it was Miranda warning, okay, advising him the right to remain silent, in effect, protection from self-incrimination, that is, the right to refuse to answer questions or provide information to law enforcement or other officials. These rights are often referred to as Miranda rights. The purpose of such notifications is to preserve the admissibility of their statements made during custodial interrogation and later criminal proceedings. The idea came from a law professor, Yale Camisar, who subsequently was dubbed the father of the Miranda. The language used in the Miranda warning was derived from the 1966, so Miranda would have been after this, U.S. Supreme Court case, Miranda versus Arizona. The specific language used in the warning varies between jurisdictions, but the warning is deemed adequate as long as the defendant's rights are properly disclosed, such that in any waiver of those rights by the defendant is knowing, voluntarily, and intelligent. For example, the warning may be phrased as follows: you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in a court. You have the right to talk to an attorney for advice before we ask you any questions. You have the right to have a lawyer with you during questioning. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you before any questions if you wish. If you decide to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you have the right to stop answering questions at any time. So basically how it works in the United States is that each state passes their own laws, and then those are either, or enforced or challenged, okay? And then they work their way through the state courts. So they go to if someone's convicted, they go to the appellate court, they go to that state Supreme Court, and then they'll apply to have it heard by the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court doesn't always have to hear everything. They can selectively choose what they want. So they chose in 1966 to hear this case, okay? And then these rights that were generally, and usually in America how it works is that defendants' rights against the state there are more of those rights in the Northeast liberal states, California, Washington, Oregon, whereas in more like what they would call red state, Republican states, it's more of the state has more power than the individual. Despite all the Republican nonsense about, freedom and individual and all that kind of crap, the Republicans are always backing the state as opposed to the individual rights, okay? Whereas in more liberal states, it's more of backing the individual and giving them rights, and then going over there. So this is Arizona. Arizona would be a red state. So what was happening is that this individual's rights were not as, defined in Arizona. So it went all the way to the Supreme Court. Interesting is that the Chief Justice was Orville Warren, who also did the Warren Report. But anyway, so it came about. Let's see if there's a date on this here. Let's see, Miranda versus Arizona. Yeah, it was argued before the Supreme Court March 1st, 1966. And let's see, does it go back? It probably goes back to, like 1965 or so. Yeah, 1963. Ernesto Miranda was arrested by the Phoenix Police Department based on circumstantial evidence linking him to the kidnapping and rape of an 18-year-old woman 10 days earlier. After 2 hours of interrogation by police officers, Miranda signed a confession to the rape charge on forms that include the statement, "I do hereby swear that I make this statement voluntarily and of my own free will, and no threats, coercion, or promise of immunity, with full knowledge of my legal rights, understanding my any statement I make may be used against me." However, at no time was Miranda told of his right to counsel. You see, because that's how the police get people. You got a lot of people in jail now that are ignorant, not educated. The police and the prosecutors make their careers off the back, on the backs of the poor. Okay, in America, unfortunately, it's just the way it works. And another thing that a lot of people don't understand about justice in America is that most of the people in prison, most of the drug cases that end up putting people in prison, probably 75% of them never, ever, ever went to trial. Never went to trial. Okay? Because what happens is you get poor people who can't afford a decent attorney. They got a public offender who's overwhelmed, has tons of cases, and they get in there, and what happens is the prosecutor throws the book at them. Every single case, okay? Even for minor things. Oh, you're looking for 10, 20, 30, 40 years in prison if you don't cooperate, okay? And so you throw that at someone, they start to panic, okay? And then you got a court-appointed the public defender who's overwhelmed and can't really investigate. I mean, most public defenders don't really investigate their cases. They just give on-the-spot legal advice to their defendant, and usually it's, here, they're going to come at you with 30 years in prison unless you take a deal. But I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. It wasn't me. Well, they've got this and they've got that, and, it doesn't look good. So they're willing to give you 15 years in prison if you just confess or plea bargain a deal. And that's what happens in 75% of the cases in America, that poor people can't afford attorneys, so they always plea bargain, okay? And that's how you fill the prisons. It's a racket, okay? You get judges and you get prosecutors that get elected for putting people in prison, protecting protecting the law-abiding citizens, and that's how they do it, by showing numbers. Okay, if you're standing up for the rights of the defendants, you're not going to get reelected as, prosecutor in your county. But if you can go out and say, "Hey, I have a 99% conviction rate," of course you're going to have a 99% conviction rate because you got 75, 80% of those people, okay, that you're making plea deals with, and then the other 25%, you're not going to prosecute anybody unless you know absolutely that you're probably going to get a conviction on them. There's enough evidence to get a conviction. The rest of you, you're going to drop the charges and let them walk. Okay? So that's what's happening in justice today. In America, it's really not justice. It's really just, I don't really know what you would call it. That's why we have more people in prison than any other country. We got a couple of million people in prison. It's something like 2 million people. I believe it's something like 2 million people in prison, about 2 to 3 million people on parole or, on probation. Okay? So justice does not exist in America. I don't care what they tell you. I do prefer the American justice system over other systems, like in Mexico where you got to prove that you're innocent. But if you're poor, if you have money, justice exists. If you don't have money, there is no justice in America. And what we're looking at, Oswald is indigent, is poor. They know this. They know that they can apply pressure to him, just given enough time, enough interviews to wear him down, okay? But the problem is that this guy isn't wearing down. This guy isn't giving them anything, okay? What's probably going to happen is, on Sunday, if he didn't get killed, it'd be like, okay, on Monday, the prosecutor's going to come in and offer you a deal. You'll serve life for killing the president and killing Tippit, but you won't get the death penalty. Okay, if you don't, cop a deal, okay, you're facing the death penalty. And with this evidence, we're most likely going to get you. Okay, Dallas, Henry Wade was the electric chair guy. He put more people behind bars and in that electric chair than any other county in all of Texas. And almost all of them were complete indigent, poor people that never got proper representation. Okay? That's just the facts. Henry Wade built his career on the backs and the bones and the blood of the poor of Dallas County. Because if you think about it, you've got this prosecutor making his career. You got a few indigent people that maybe they've committed petty crimes before, but maybe they weren't exactly innocent, but they didn't commit that crime. But he built his career on burning these people's bodies. Okay? Anyway, so this is what Oswald's up against. We'll come up against Henry Wade pretty soon, but and that's one thing. Henry Wade was fighting with the FBI and fighting with the Warren Commission because this case would have made him for the rest of his life. He could have retired, gone on to be governor, mayor, governor, whatever, even maybe president on this case. Okay? But it got snatched away from him. I don't know how they could have legally done that, but it got snatched away from him. He gave it up. I'm sure lots of pressure was applied, and then other incentives were applied onto it also. Anyway, we'll continue with this. We'll try to finish this up. We're on page 10 right now, and we'll continue. But I want to get back to my little dictionary on the language of espionage. All right. Hold on one second. All right, we're getting down to the end here. So we'll just keep going. It says pig, Russian intelligence term for traitor. Okay? So, there's not much in the JFK assassination that would apply for traitor. Okay? But there were people like Nishenko and other, like Mitrokhin, okay, that would have been killed if they'd ever been surfaced again. And Russian intelligence definitely would have killed them. Okay, bullet in the back of the head. You see what's happening now in the last 20 years with Putin. Anybody Russian that speaks out against Putin, their families arrested, businesses are taken, families tortured, sent to prisons, gulags, and then they're killed. You see what happened to Navalny. He got poisoned. He stood up against Putin. Now he's in prison. Many other people, been killed. They, even outside the country, They send agents to kill them, and they want people to know that it was, Putin wants them to know it was him that killed him, okay? Because that sends a message to any other idiot out there that decides to, go that direction, give up something on Putin, but they've got that in the back of their head, how that person, died of plutonium poisoning, okay? Even in the UK, they're not safe. Anyway, plain text, the original message before encryption. So we saw that on that one-time pad. We had the encrypted. We had the message like the dog is a chair. That would be the original message, and then when you put it through the one-time pad, it would encrypt out. Okay. Now, one thing I forgot to mention about the one-time pad in the transmissions is that it was not always just phrases. Okay. It could have been numbers, because there were these, they called them number stations. We had number stations, they had number stations. And it would go something like this: 1, 8, 7, 5, 10, 22, 3, 5, 6, 1, 1, 3, 4, 7, 8. And you would write down those numbers, and your one-time pad would be able to translate that into a message. Okay? If you could listen, the CIA, the NSA could listen to that all day, but if you didn't have the one-time pad, there's no computer in the world that could translate that message. I mean, it was like Enigma on steroids. The Russians were really big on using the one-time pads. The Americans, not so much. The Americans are more about electronic encryption. But the one-time pad is very simple, very easy to use. Also, they had one-time pads that they could pour either some kind of chemical on it, and it would completely destroy, maybe even incinerate the one-time pad. Okay? And again, they never found a one-time pad with Oswald, and they never found a one-time pad with Marina. But, now that I've been thinking about it, I guarantee you that if there's a library near Oswald, that he was probably going to that library. Matter of fact, there was a library that I believe a policeman chased someone who looked like Oswald after the Tippit shooting into the library, but it was a worker there. I guarantee you, if the police had gone in to that library and torn up the bookshelves, it would have been one hell of a thing to do it. They probably would have found some kind of encryption book or one-time pads that Oswald was using to make and translate messages that he would leave at some park somewhere, or he would leave, at his post office box. But hell, if that, I'm sure those libraries have been gone through and the shelves have been moved and things like that. Because, you think about it, Oswald could go to the library after work, pull out his one-time pad. Well, he could go to the post office right across the Dealey Plaza, pick up his message, his encrypted message, go to the library, pull out his one-time pad under the shelf somewhere, hidden in the wall somewhere, just sat there in front of everybody and translated it into his message. And then he could have wrote back another message, gone back, put his one-time pad back, and then the next day, after work, gone over and left his message in his P.O. box. And no one, even if someone in the post office had looked at the message, they wouldn't have been able to tell what it was. Okay? To them, it would have looked like, an envelope with a piece of paper in it. And, we're also not even thinking that there could have been multiple post office boxes that Oswald would have had keys to that have been given to him that were owned by his handler or people he was working with, that he could leave messages in or retrieve messages. Okay? Anyway. Playback. To provide false information to the enemy while gaining accurate information from him or her. Okay, that's called disinformation. Okay? So, this is what Oswald would have been doing. Okay? In this context. We would have... Okay, so Oswald got back from Japan. He's sitting down at Del Toro base. They've got him over in some shack somewhere. You know, they're saying he's doing... I believe he was supposed to be doing... I don't know, washing trucks or clerical duties or some shit like that. So his commanding officer is told, hey, Oswald's going to be over here doing clerical duties. It was called... When I was in the military, it was called casual duty. Okay, so what happened is, if you were in your last 6 months of your whatever job you were doing, your replacement could show up within those 6 months, okay? And either they would put the replacement on casual duty, and then you would continue to work until your last official date, and then that replacement would come in maybe a couple weeks before, and you'd show them around, and then they would take over. Or you would go off, you would show them around, they would show up, you would show them what to do, and then you would spend your last month cleaning toilets, you know, mopping the gym, cutting the grass on the base, whatever. It's called casual duty. Believe me, I know about casual duty because I did casual duty like the last 2 weeks before I got out, because my guy showed up and I showed him, I spent about a week showing him what I did and the routine and stuff like that, maybe 2 weeks, and then I still had another 2 weeks, I believe maybe 3 weeks to go before I was out, and they put me on casual duty. So I was like mopping the gym at Presidio Monterey, and this is why I know about Russian school, because the big gym was over at the Russian school. Okay, the Russian school is at the back of Presidio Monterey DLI, and it's like a village of about, I don't know, 10, 20 dorms, maybe not that many, maybe, yeah, about 5 or 10 dorms, and about 5 or 10 classroom buildings, okay? And it's all geared towards Russian. All the signs are in Russian and English. The menus are in Russian and English. You go to the dining hall, they had the best food there. A lot of times they serve Russian food. So they were trying to get people to use their Russian language they were learning. The Russian school also had a high burnout rate. I think it was something like 85%. Okay, which meant that, let's see, if you got 10 guys in your class, only 2 of you are going to make it to that 1 year of Russian class. And then if you're really good, they would extend it another 1 year. And you go in, you'd have to be in, I think, like, it was something like 6 years, I believe. But yeah, I talked with the Russian guys, and they told me, I mean, you know, all kinds of stuff, where they were going to be doing and where they're going. Because, you know, they got 19-year-old kids over there. It's like a college campus. Okay, you could wear casual clothes. You didn't have to wear military uniforms all the time, except when you were doing your basics training, I guess you could say. I think like Tuesdays and Thursdays, for about 2 hours or so, I had to do the same thing. We would meet, and then you'd have a training officer who would go over basically everything. How to set up a claymore mine, how to clean a weapon, all these things. Every day was a different task. Refresher courses, okay? Because if you're there for a year after basic training, you're going to forget things, okay? So that's what we did. And I would do that stuff with those guys, and I picked up a few Russian words like nijivo, which means I'll do nothing, and then dies, yes, and it's been like, 20-something years? No, 30-something years. Wow. It's been over 30 years, so it's been a long time. But a lot of those guys would end up, a lot of them couldn't tell me, but they'd end up in these trucks or vans, whatever you call them, and they have dishes on them, and they would take these vans and set them up by the East German border or the Czechoslovakian border in southern Germany, and they'd sit there and they'd listen to radio communications, okay, because you got tanks and vehicles moving around, and these guys would be right on the border there, camouflage and everything, and be listening to that radio traffic, and they'd write it down. If they heard anything worthwhile, every day they'd send back their reports, and everything was recorded. But anything, emergency-wise, like, hey, this brigade is getting ready to cross the border at 0600 hours, they would send that back immediately. So they went to school to learn that. I think it was in Arizona they went after that. Other ones were being trained to be interrogators. They would catch Russian prisoners. You would interrogate them, ask them where their unit was, their commander, what their mission was, all these kinds of things. And a lot of these kids didn't know it. They were just guessing at what they had read. But the main purpose was to get the Russian down, okay? And then what happened to the kids, the 8%, the 8 out of 10, they got to choose another MOS. And what happened is at the end of when I was there, it was the end of the Cold War. So the budget was probably going to be cut for DLI and Russian linguists and stuff like that. They didn't know that they would change it and flip it. I think about half of Russian school became Arab school. Okay, and so we just started teaching people to study Arabic. But so that's what happened, and I learned a lot from these kids. And I say kids, I was like 22. They were like 18, 19, But that was Russian school. So I don't know how I got into this long speech here, but anyway, we'll just keep going. Anyway, it says pocket litter. Items in a spy's pocket, receipts, coins, theater tickets, etc., that add authenticity to his or her identity. Well, I'm still trying to find out all the pocket litter that Oswald had on him. I know that Oswald had several wallets that were found. There was a wallet that was found on him. There was a wallet that was found at the Tippett scene. There was a wallet that was left with the money and the ring at Mrs. Payne's house for Marina. Oswald also had a wallet that was found. I've seen it in a picture in his belongings at Beckley. Who the hell has 4 to 5 wallets? Okay. The reason you would do something like that is spycraft. Okay. So each wallet is going to have a separate identity. Okay, or a separate purpose. Okay. You're going to have your Alec Heidel identity. You're going to have your Leon Oswald identity. You're going to have your O.H. Lee identity. Okay. So you got to wonder, why would Oswald have his Alec Heidel ID? Okay, think about it. President's just been shot. Oswald runs home. He picks up his ID and his wallet for his Alec Heidel persona. Okay? Also, on his person, I believe in his wallet, I haven't been able to find it yet, but I've heard this, he had this half of the playing card. Okay? So, if you think about it, if Oswald is an informant, either in the FBI or the military intelligence, or he's working with this right-wing group, either trying to infiltrate them, or he's part of that group, the Birch Society, whatever, he's going to be wondering what the hell happened. We tried to prevent the assassination, and it went wrong. It still occurred. Okay? So if he's gone up Elm Street, tried to talk to Ruby, Ruby's place is closed, he's run back down, jumped on the bus, jumped on the cab, went home, grabbed his wallet, grabbed his pistol, and then he maybe if he tried to go down to see Ruby off Marcellus, he ended up shooting Tippett. If not, he jumped in the car with Tippett, and Tippett dropped him off at the Texas School Book Depository. The Texas Theater. And then people are saying, we'll hear testimony, or read testimony, if people are saying that they saw Oswald come in, and he was seat hopping. So he would go find someone to sit by themselves, go and sit right down right next to them, even though the theater was almost completely empty. And then he started off upstairs, and then he worked his way downstairs, because he was told it's safer to meet someone upstairs. Okay? So, if Oswald is doing that, it sounds to me, okay, like he's trying to make contact with someone he hasn't met before and discuss what's going on. And he's going to show his name as Alex Heidel, and here's my card that was given to you by my handler, and you've got the other card, and this is how I know you are you, and I am him. And I'm Alex Heidel. Okay? He's not going to be saying to some stranger, oh yeah, I'm Lee Harvey Oswald, and I work at the Texas School Book Depository. No. Also be a good reason to take a gun, because you're not really sure what the hell's going on. Maybe your handler is setting you up, for whatever, which is exactly what happened. Okay? So that's why Oswald's like, he can't find his contact. Okay? And then when the lights come on, the police come in, he's like, oh, this is it. Damn it. I've been fucked. I've been screwed. The pooch. I'm the pooch, and I've been screwed. Okay? That's when he realizes what's going on. That's why he either pulls the gun or hits the officer, because he knows that there's some police that are involved in this Birch Society right-wing group, and that maybe one of them is going to shoot him right there, okay, and say he resisted, okay? And maybe, all these things. I don't know. I do find it interesting that if he did pull the gun, if he did shoot Tippett, if he did pull the gun in the theater, why are Oswald's fingerprints not on the revolver? Did he have it taped up? No. We're going to find out about that too. So that would be the pocket litter that he would have in his pocket, his wallet with his fake ID for whoever he's meeting, his the playing card that's been torn in half. They had it's interesting, he had the bus receipts too. Okay? They didn't find a ticket though. That's the thing. I don't think they found a theater ticket in there. But they did find money on him. So why would you not purchase a ticket? Well, if there's police cars going up and down, you would probably not purchase a ticket. But how could you get past that lady and she not see you? That's interesting, I think. So there's a lot of things that he looks guilty, he doesn't look guilty. What exactly is going on here with him? So I found out about the term about pocket litter from this guy who was in this movie called Argo. Okay? And he was this CIA operative who got the I think like 5 or 6 Americans out. They posed as Canadians and got them out of Iran back in 1980. Hold on one second. All right, so here he is. It's Tony Mendez. Okay. Oh wow, he just died. So Tony Mendez was part of the Canadian Caper. Okay, he was in the CIA service from 1963 to 1990, and I read his book, and it talks about. As a matter of fact, let me just explain something. What I'm telling you, everything that I go over is not stuff that I ever experienced, not stuff that I learned from a job or anything like that, except for doing collections. I was never involved in the government, never in the CIA, never in the FBI, never in any kind of government agency, nothing like that. Just make that clear. When I talk about stuff, it's just from reading, okay, and common sense, and movies, okay? So I may talk about stuff that sounds like I know what I'm talking about, but really, I don't. I'm just going from, reading about it, seeing movies, stuff like that. So it's kind of like this. I could read a manual on how to fly a 747. I could watch some movies about it. I could even talk to somebody who flew 747s. Okay? But doesn't mean that I can fly a fucking 747. Okay? That's the difference. Okay? There are people like Tony Mendez who know what they're talking about, have experienced it, lived it, they write about it, and then, little yokels like me read about it. Okay? Because it's just something I like to read about. Okay? I probably read almost every major. I don't like reading fiction like Leclerc or something like that, even though he does use terms that are used by officers. I like to read from actual sources. So I rarely ever read any. Maybe I used to read some James Bond when I was younger, but in the last 20 years, I always read autobiographies or books that are nonfiction. Okay. So 20, 30 years of reading and stuff like that, you get kind of a good idea of what's happening. Okay. And you can do that on anything. I mean, if you don't know, how to change your carburetor in a 1970 Ford Mustang, you go down and get Chilton's book and read about it. And then you suffer, and you maybe talk to your friends, and then you suffer while trying to remove it and replace it while reading the book and trying to do the actual. Okay? Again, like I could read books about, surgery, brain surgery, and watch movies about brain surgery. But unless I'd gone through medical school, I would never attempt brain surgery. Okay? But anyway, Tony Mendez is really good. He's really good at exfiltration and infiltration and pocket litter. He knows what you need to get in and get out of a country. So if you've done any traveling like I have, done a lot of traveling, you have your passport. It's got your name and your photo and your country and all that stuff on it, and little numbers at the bottom and little barcodes, and they scan those wherever you go. They're going to scan that, and a lot of these countries, especially in the West, are going to have a database of like everybody's freaking passport, okay? Or they're going to have a database of criminals that they're looking for. Usually it's easier for the country, like some country in Africa, to buy a database of international murderers and criminals from, what was that called? Interpol, okay? But countries like in the West, especially the U.S., are going to have a database of everybody. So if they scan that barcode and they look at that picture that they've got on file, not just the one that's on your passport, that photo they have on file should match your passport and match the one they're looking at. And they're also taking a picture of you, by the way, so smile and wave. Okay? Because what happens is that sometimes people are stupid and they buy fake passports off the street, and someone's inserted their a picture of them in there, but it's not the real deal. Okay? And so be warned, if you got a fake passport, you go to another country that's pretty advanced, like Japan and even China and Germany and America, they're going to know. Okay? Another thing I was really shocked about when I went to Japan is they basically make you take your two index fingers and you put them on this little scanner, and then you put your chin on this little thing, and this thing scans your eyeballs. So when you come in just flying through the country in Japan, they're going to take your fingerprints and they're going to take an optical scan. Of course, most Americans would balk at that. So when you fly into a country, though, it used to be back in the 80s, you'd have to have the ticket and the passport stamps, and they'd give you like a little card that said, hey, you entered on this date, and it was from this person, and sometimes they used to sign it with their initials at the bottom. And so when you leave, you show them your passport, and they look to make sure, okay, he went through customs to come in. Okay, they want to control that, just like any other nation. And so that would be pocket litter. Okay. Also, pocket litter would include, you get stopped by the police. They're going to look at your ID, your passport, maybe even frisk you. Okay. And if you say, I'm just a tourist, and I'm here, looking at the sights, and they go through, it's not like America everywhere else. If you're walking on the street, a lot of times they don't even have to arrest you in other countries. They could just start pulling stuff from your bag and pulling stuff from your pockets. And if they're looking and you say your name is, Joe Smith, and they look and one of your IDs says it's Tony Mendez and your passport says it's, Serg Lawson, they're going to know something's up. Okay. So you always want to have all your pocket litter together and correct, or you're going to raise suspicion. And then they're going to bring you in for questioning. Okay. And other countries like China and, Thailand and, places like that, they're not going to care about your rights. Especially since you're a foreigner, you're going to have less rights. Okay. And then if you say, hey, I went to this museum here and there and everywhere, and they're going to look at the time, so you go to some museum, well, what have you been doing today? Oh, I went to the art museum, and I went to the so-and-so memorial. Well, they're going to take a look at your photos and your camera, and they're going to go through those, and they're going to look at the times. What time were you at the war memorial? Oh, I was there at 3 p.m., I think. And if they look on there and it was 11 a.m., okay. And then what time were you at the museum? And they're going to look at your little ticket, and you say, oh, I was there at 9 a.m., or I was there at 2 p.m., and they look and see it's 9 a.m., they know you're lying. Okay? So what's in your pocket has to match up with what you're saying. Okay? Or they're going to be suspicious. So it could be that you came as an intelligence officer, just a run around. You could just be a cutout, or you could be an intelligence officer. You could just be sent over there as a tourist, just to take some pictures. While you're at this museum, take a picture of this air base right next door. Okay, and they're going to look at your photos too. And if everything you're saying doesn't match up, they're definitely going to have some suspicions. And they're either going to put you on trial for espionage, or they're going to, deport you. And in places like Iran, they're sending, the Mossad is recruiting assets over there in Iran. And some of these people aren't trained, so they're not as good as the Mossad agents would be. They're getting caught. A lot of these people are getting caught, and the Iranians are stupid, and they say, oh, these are Mossad agents, and they weren't Mossad agents, they were Mossad assets. Big difference, okay? Because a Mossad agent would never get caught. But these Mossad assets were getting caught. Oh, no, I take that back, because some Mossad agents did get caught, like Eli Cohen. There was these two idiots that got caught in Jordan trying to kill Abbas and Masood, or whatever his name was. But so anyway, your pocket litter should match up what you say. And Tony Mendez was the master of pocket litter and the master of disguises. Okay, I've watched some videos from Joan Mendez. She actually, Joan actually shows up. If you ever subscribe to the Spy Museum's YouTube channel, she's on those videos, and they do some great stuff. And they talk about, they can't make you thinner than you were, but they can definitely make you fatter than you were. Okay, you can add things to your face. You can add, a gut. You can add a wig. You can add sunglasses and hats and stuff like that, and change sunglasses and hats and jackets. And Joanna was really, really good. She Very, very, very interesting. All the stuff she's retired now, but all the stuff she goes over. I listen to all these videos. It's really just totally fascinating to me. Makes you wish you had a second life. You could go back and, do something else. But, it's interesting to listen. Let me see. Okay, we're almost out of time. Provocateur, an operative sent to incite a target group to action for purpose of entrapping or embarrassing them. Of course, there's really not much in the JFK assassination related to that, but you got people like QAnon, you got people like Ron and Jim Watkins, who are definitely, paid agents of Moscow, of chaos agents that are paid to put out false information, to incite groups. I mean, Ron was practically coordinating the January 6th riots from Japan, and then sitting back and laughing about the whole thing. And then his dad was there helping them, in the riots. You don't ever do the illegal shit yourself. You send in some other stupid idiot to do it for you. Okay? So that's what they were doing. But those would be agent provocateurs. Okay? Purple, American name for Japanese diplomatic cipher machines used from 1939 1945. Now, the Japanese knew they were being monitored. Okay? So that's why all the ships that went to sea didn't use their radio, or had very little radio traffic to be monitored, and the communications pickup back in Japan didn't really bring up that much stuff. And then by the time it was translated, because we didn't have very many people that spoke Japanese, by the time it did get translated, the attack had already occurred. Matter of fact, that was one of the problems is the Japanese were embarrassed about, is that the Japanese sent a declaration of war to their embassy in Washington on a Sunday when there weren't all the diplomatic staff there, and then they had to decode it from their Japanese cipher machines. And then by the time that got decoded, because it's like 7 o'clock was the attack in Hawaii, and that's noon or maybe 1 o'clock in Washington, D.C. So they started that morning. By the time it got decoded, the attack had occurred. So they weren't able to present their declaration of war before the attack, and there were a lot of embarrassment about that. Not that really makes a difference, though. But anyway, so we're going to keep going on with this and pick this up. We're almost done with it. We're almost done with Bookout. We'll get back into more other statements of other people. All right, take care, and we will see you next time.